Alrighty, friends. Well, week one of the psychology of risk and trading. So, we're going to be going over two parts in today's lesson: the cognitive biases in risk perception and decision making, and emotional influences on trading behavior. So, it's going to be pretty quick, just going over the cognitive biases and some emotional influences that you guys should be aware of. And the precursor to this lesson, if you're going to take anything, is if you can better understand your impulses and emotions, you'll better be able to follow your risk management plan. That's plain and simple. I know for many of you, and myself included, the more we build an understanding behind something, the more we're going to be able to fully implement that, whatever it is, into our daily lives. So if our goal is to become really good at risk management, the better understanding we have at all the factors in play behind risk management, the better we're going to be able to follow through on that plan. So my goal with these lessons is to be concise and quick and just make this something where you can take actionable tools and apply it directly to your trading strategy and your life in general. So without further ado, let's jump into the two parts. First part, cognitive biases in risk perception and decision making. So we have three big ones that we're going to talk about today. We have overconfidence bias, we have loss aversion, and we have anchoring bias. So I'll just go over the three quickly. If you guys want me to delve into any of those three more in depth, please at any time shoot it out in the chat, let me know, and I will do so. Or stop me for any other questions you guys might have. So the overconfidence bias, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's the tendency to overestimate one's knowledge or control over trading outcomes. So this often leads to excessive risk trading and ignoring contrary signals, resulting in larger losses. So we know this. We know that if we're overconfident going into the market, say we're on a win streak, and you've been listening to your gut feeling, which I'm not saying you shouldn't do, but let's say you're listening to your gut feeling and you're leaning further and further away from your technical analysis. What can often happen is when you have contrary signals come into the market on a technical level saying, hey, you probably shouldn't go long here, but you've been leaning more and more towards that gut feeling. Often what happens is we start to subconsciously develop this overconfidence bias, and we start leaning into that gut feeling a little more than we probably should and ignoring these signals. And oftentimes that results in not only a breakdown of your risk management plan, you're losing more capital, but it's also super detrimental to your psyche. So when we think about trading as a whole, I often talk about how the psychological aspect and discipline behind trading is more important. Yes, more important than the technical ability behind trading, the technical understanding of why would you get in long or short or whatever it might be. And the reason I say that is because you could have the perfect risk management plan and the perfect strategy for every trade. You know exactly when it hits this level, you want to go long, and this is going to be your TP, and this is going to be your stop loss. It can be perfect. But if you do not have the discipline to follow through on that plan, none of it matters. So being aware of these biases, it is super important just for overall understanding of what's affecting you and how it can affect your trading. So the next big one is loss aversion. So people feel the pain of loss more acutely than the pleasure of gains. And I know that sounds, like kind of monetary. You're like, oh, I celebrate my wins all the time. I feel them the same as my losses. But if you really pay attention to your actions and your feelings and try to bring them to a conscious level instead of kind of keeping them in our subconscious realm, you'll start to notice that those losses really do affect you more than the gains, because you could be consistent, just like the overconfidence bias. You could have a win streak, you can be really consistent, and then you take a couple bad trades in a row. Again, just like our other biases, it not only affects our risk management portfolio, but it also will start to affect your psychological aspect of trading. So again, I don't want to beat the dead horse on this stuff, but you guys really do need to pay attention to your feelings and what's happening behind the scenes when you are winning and losing and developing your risk management strategy. And I don't say that lightly, because truly, if you are trying to make it big, if you're trying to one day, let's seriously take a step back for a second and think about yourself in 10 years. Where do you picture yourself in 10 years? And is trading a part of that? If trading is not a part of that, well, why even, I don't know. That's for you to decide on yourself. But if trading is a part of your 10-year plan and you really want this to shape your financial life moving forward, you really have to dial in your risk management. And when you don't have an understanding of these psychological aspects of play, like, you're not going to make it super far in your risk management. And in turn, you're not going to make it super far in your trading career, at least consistently. So again, just briefly recapping loss aversion. These feelings of loss can lead to much worse consequences than just the surface level financial loss that you feel. So let's move on to the anchoring biases. This is our last one. Like I said, this is going to be a quick lesson. We're going to try to make it concise. So fixating on specific prices or data points, influencing decisions despite changing conditions. So that's the definition of anchoring. I'll say it one more time. Fixating on specific prices or data points, influencing decisions despite changing conditions. So I see this all the time. And again, I didn't even realize until I started teaching it today in this class, all of these play a really big part in our win streaks. So we can start to develop this stuff when we go on big winning runs and we start to lean away from our risk management plan and our fundamentals. A lot of these biases can start to creep in on a subconscious level. So let's say there's a certain point, let's call it NASDAQ, and let's call it 17,000 price point. Let's say the last 6 weeks, we've bounced off that point, and along with some other congruences, and we've been going long off that point, and you've been making good trades off that. When we start fixating on these anchor points in the market, it could be based off trend lines, it could be off of whatever, a point of control, it doesn't matter. When we start fixating on these points, oftentimes what will happen is we'll start to mitigate what contrary points in the market could be. So again, just to kind of hammer down on the point that these biases are very important to be aware of. So when we start fixating on points in the market and you catch yourself doing that, make sure every single trade you are looking at the full picture on a technical scale. Not only, you guys also know, I'm big on paying attention to the fundamentals around it, like global news and political changes that will affect the market. You guys need to be aware of that stuff. You need to be aware that you're not trading during news hours, whatever it might be. But on a technical scale, every single time we step into a trade, we need to be paying attention to not only our risk management strategy and our overall strategy of getting into a trade and our confluences, but also all these biases. Because if we're paying attention to specific points and really not focusing on the picture as a whole, it can have some devastating effects. So I know that was a bit long as far as anchoring biases, but this stuff is really important. So if you gain anything from this, just really pay attention to your feelings and how you are entering each trade, because I can promise you, if you start to negate how important your risk management plan is, all these fundamentals start to fade away and these biases start to creep in and these bad habits start to creep in, and you will lose a lot of progress, not only financially, but also mentally. All right, part 2, emotional influences on trading. So we have 3 big ones. Well, 2 big ones. We have fear and greed. We will talk over those briefly. And then we also have herd behavior, which I want to touch on that one a bit more in depth. So fear, pretty straightforward. What is fear in the market? It's the anxiety triggered by market volatility and potential losses. So I think we all are, if we have been trading for any amount of time, I think we are all familiar with fear. in the market. So it can lead to panic selling or avoiding new opportunities altogether. And so often, especially with new traders, it's the same thing. If we're on a win streak, everything's feeling good, then you lose once, and all of a sudden this fear just becomes overwhelming. You don't know how to deal with it. There's lots to be said about that, but if you have a really strong strategy, and that's what we're teaching here at Eternal Exchange, but on a more personal level, when you step away from what Jojo's teaching with ICT or whatever your confluence is to get into a trade, it has to be on a deeper level, or a more personalized level rather. You have to make your risk management plan specific to you, not only to your futures contract account. So let's say you're only on prop firms right now and you have a 50K account. You don't only have to make a risk management plan for that 50K account. You also have to make it for your overall finances that you're bringing in, your income, your expenses, what your overall risk management plan looks like. So when fear starts to creep in, if you already have a really well structured risk management plan, all you have to do is follow it. You don't have to pay attention to the fear or any overwhelming feelings or anxiety. All you have to do is follow your risk management plan and your strategy. And if they're well made, you don't have to worry about anything. So when that fear starts to creep in, just take a deep breath, realize this is part of the game, and follow your risk management strategy. So greed. Talk about greed. Almost worse, I would say. And I've seen it with many people. Especially, I see it in the younger crowd more often. You also see it in the older crowd. Again, I've been doing this for a couple years now, and just on the teaching side of things, and really paying attention to how new people step in who are brand new to futures and trading. And I always find that the people who are financially set, like say they already have their retirement fund going, they make a good income, their children are taken care of, those are the people that always in my experience, find the most success in trading, because they're not worried about making money quickly. They know what the long game is. They've had their portfolio for 20 plus years. What happens is when you step into the market and you treat this as a need, a necessity, all of these primal emotions like fear and greed really start to creep in. And if you are not paying attention and you're keeping them on a subconscious level, they will have tremendous negative effects on your trading. So what is greed in the market? It's a desire for excessive profit, often leading to reckless risk taking. Yeah, we know, pretty straightforward. So traders may ignore risk management strategies and hold on to positions too long, hoping for higher gains. So we know what greed is. We know how it affects us. I'll just give you guys some quick examples. A trader might skip stop loss orders, leading to massive losses during market reversals. So I see it all the time. And I would say more often than not, when people come to me with a risk management plan and they say, hey, this is my risk management plan, I'm always going for a 2-to-1, and I'm trading with 4 micros. And what do you think? Can you tell me about it? Because somehow I'm still losing money. Well, on paper, it can look great. Yeah, you're going for a 2-to-1 and you're waiting for all these confluences and this is your lot size. Everything looks great. But oftentimes I'll see a combination of fear and greed. So they're trying to make more money and not lose any money. And so they will hold on to losing trades for much longer. So let's do it like this. You get into a trade, you're going for a 2-to-1. Your first TP is at 2-to-1, and you get out before that TP on half your lot, and now you're letting only 2 contracts run to that full TP. I see it so often, but when it comes to your losses, you hold that full lot until you hit your stop loss. So when you look on the 2020 when we look in the rear view at this trade and we really pay attention to what's going on, that trade is way closer to a 1-to-1 than you might realize. And oftentimes that whomever is sending me that stuff is experiencing a 40% win rate or a 35% win rate. So that one-to-one trade is terrible for the risk management strategy. So again, long little tangent just to tell you guys that if you are not locked in on your risk management plan, fear and greed will step in so quickly. So moving on to our final point, herd behavior. So this is huge. And I wanted to touch on this because, you know, on a broader scale, when we're talking about the market, herd behavior is often, you'll see it just like in massive like meme movements where people jump on GameStop or AMC or whatever it is, and you'll see massive bubbles form and then massive sell-offs. That's the broader terminology behind herd behavior in the market. But what I want to touch on is I see it all the time in this Discord, and luckily it's not as often or common in this Discord, but especially the bigger Discords where you have a couple thousand people in there and everybody is taking the same trade. Oftentimes, even if that trade goes against your parameters and you're not seeing your confluences to get into that trade, you'll get into it anyway. What I encourage you guys to do is really guard yourself from that herd behavior. Make a set of rules for yourself where I am not going to get into this trade unless I see this confluence, and this confluence. And my TP has to be at least, my first TP is a 2-to-1 and the full trade is looking like a 3-to-1. That's what we should be paying attention to, because I see it probably, I know I'm victim to this. I'm sure everybody in this audience is victim to that. It happens all the time. And it's not only on a trading level, I see it in real life all the time. I have a good story for you guys if you want to hear it. We're getting to the end of the lesson, but I have a really good example of this herd mentality. I'll quickly go over it with you guys for free. So I'm in Alaska, and picture it's summer. The sun is setting at like midnight. Everybody just came out from live music. There's a couple hundred people on this beautiful point overlooking the ocean and the sunset, and it's beautiful. The whole thing, it's just picturesque. Everybody's having a great time. And 1 year prior, I believe it was exactly 1 year prior to the week, I didn't know him, but there was some man who, unfortunately, with his son on a similar night to that, they, after live music or going river rafting or whatever it is, they walked out on the beach, and the beaches there in this specific part of Alaska are super muddy, and it is quicksand. And unfortunately, this man went out into the water. He couldn't get out, and the tide ended up rising, and he ended up passing away. It was tragic, and it happens way more often than you would think out there. And so 1 year later, we're all out on this point. There's a couple hundred people. Truly, there's at a minimum 200 people out there. And it's beautiful. Everyone's having a good time. And then I look over after talking with my friends, and I see this group of people getting ready to jump into the water, which it's a river leading into the ocean, and there is no safe way to get out. And his friend group is not from around there. They don't know the stories, why it's so dangerous. But everybody around there, the 200 plus people, they all know that what happened a year ago and how often it happens and how dangerous it is for anyone to go into that water. But because of the herd mentality, everybody from afar sat there and said, "Hey, don't do it. Don't do it. It's bad." And the guys who were about to jump in kind of just laughed it off. And that was the end. Everybody just kind of looked around like someone was going to do something, but nobody was. And so there's a couple hundred people out here about to watch this guy jump to his death. Not immediately, he's going to be pulled out to sea, and then it's just a tragic situation. And so I'm seriously, I don't know, I'm probably 21 at the time, and I'm looking around, and I'm one of the youngest guys out there, and I'm like, oh, really? Nobody is going to do anything, and we're just going to watch this guy die. So I ended up walking over to him, talking him through exactly what happened. He was super drunk, it took me probably 10 minutes or so to really help him understand the gravity of the situation. And he ended up giving me a hug and saying thank you. And his friends kind of just chuckled and walked away and didn't pay much attention to it. And I'm sitting there like, holy crap, there was 200 people who knew that if this guy jumped in the water, he would be pulled out and he would get stuck in the mud. There's professional surfers who have gone up to that exact same place to surf the board tide. I mean, swimmers for 30 plus years, really strong men who get stuck out there and die. It's just a thing that happens. And not one person was willing to step in and do anything about it. So we're talking about life and death there, and no one's willing to do anything, because when we're in a group, it is often, and it is human for us to think that the responsibility is on someone else. That person is supposed to do it. That person's supposed to do it. Oh, he's a retired police officer. He's supposed to take the responsibility. The thing is, nobody's going to take the responsibility. So we're talking about life and death here. When we go into the trading side of things, where the consequences are way less, this effect of herd mentality is going to play way bigger roles. So because you're really not thinking about, it's not life and death. It doesn't matter. It's on a subconscious level. So the reason I wanted to touch on this one so much is because even if Trader Joe is saying this is the best trade, you have to get in it, you need to confirm all of your confluences with your risk management plan before you get into that trade. It is a non-negotiable if you really want to find success in your career in trading. That's all I got for you guys today. I know it was a bit heavy at the end there, but I find it tragic, not only with that story, but it's just, I see it in life all the time. I mean, people walking down the street and someone's hurt on the side of the road. Nobody stops to help because it's someone else's responsibility. So I just encourage you guys to take responsibility, implement your risk management plan, and follow it to a T. All these emotions of greed and fear and this herd mentality of everybody going in long and you think it's going to go short. If you have a risk management plan laid out and in front of you before you even sit down, it makes it easy for yourself. So again, really, this whole lesson was just an encouragement to make it easy for yourself. So be aware of these cognitive biases that we develop, and be aware of these emotional influences as well, because they will creep up if you are not paying attention, and they will kind of wreck your trade, unfortunately. So I appreciate you guys joining up. If you guys have any questions, shoot them out in the chat. You guys can always DM me, whatever it might be. But I appreciate you guys listening. And I also encourage you guys not only to do everything we just went over, but also tell your loved ones that you love them. Go exercise, go eat healthy, do the right thing, do the hard thing. I mean, we unfortunately in today's day and age don't have enough people doing the hard thing and the right thing. And so you guys should be the ones in your community to do it. So I appreciate you guys tons, and I will catch you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.